All right. Hey, here's your host, Walter Bond, and I'm really excited today. We have a special guest who brings a lot of experience in franchising, a lot of experience in leadership, and a lot of experience just in life. As a wonderful daughter, a wonderful granddaughter, and very proud of success. Emma, you brought me in to speak for you a couple times. So we wanted to introduce the CEO of Home Helpers, Emma Dickerson. Welcome to our show today.
Thank you, Walter. It's truly a pleasure and an honor to be with you today.
Okay, good. Well, tell us about home helpers. We have a lot of people listening who may or may not know about home helpers. Just explain out of your own mouth exactly what home helpers is. And I want to ask you some questions about your journey to the top inside of home helpers.
Sure. So, Home Helpers Home Care was founded in 1997 as a franchise business model that offers business opportunities for entrepreneurs. And what we do is we provide in home care to seniors, largely the senior population, those 65 and older, as well as new mothers who may have high risk pregnancies, those recovering from rehabilitation and surgeries as an accidents, as an example, and then always those with just chronic conditions that need a little help to be able to remain as independent as they possibly can in their own homes or wherever they call home.
Love it, love it, love it. And a follow-up question to that, we believe in peak performance. We believe in professionals taking that journey. You're the CEO now. Kind of tell us your journey on how you got to Home Helpers and how you progressed through to hold that top seat.
So I actually went to school, to college, the University of Florida, to be a high school teacher, and found that being a teacher as a single mother was not going to pay the bills, and had an opportunity to join, at the time, a really new company in their management and their training department, and that was Blockbuster.
Oh,
And when I started, there was about 150 stores. And when I left 14 years later, there were 8,800 worldwide. Company doing about $1 billion in annual sales. And, it was a great place to really develop professional skills. It was a wonderful company to work for at the time. I want to be clear, I left before the decline. I think people make decisions out of either compelling trauma or compelling opportunity. And I've been incredibly blessed in my career to have nothing but incredible opportunity. And I spent time on both the corporate and the franchise verticals. My last 6 years was serving in the franchise department on the domestic side. And that's really where I learned franchising, but I learned business at Blockbuster. And then from there, I had a compelling opportunity to join Sylvan Learning Centers. For those who don't know Sylvan, they provide supplemental education to children who either need to catch up, keep up, or get ahead. And for Sylvan, I was responsible for their global franchise services operations. We had about 1,100 centers worldwide, doing about 660 million in sales, annual sales. Was very happy there, and had an acquaintance who knew the founder of Home Helpers contact me and say, I have this, acquaintance that I really think you should talk to. They're looking for someone with strong leadership and franchise experience, and it would be at a president's role. And I thought about it. I was very happy with Sylvan. Long story short, after months of discussions, a compelling opportunity with Home Helpers, and I joined in 2007. So I've been here a little over 13 years now, and have just had incredible opportunity with those three brands over a 30-year career in management, leadership, and franchising. And so it's something I'm very passionate about. As you know, you and I've talked many times about leadership and helping others climb their ladder professionally to their goals. And I get a chance to do that. And it's just incredibly rewarding for me to be able to lead the organization.
What's incredible is that you've been at this for 30 years, and I was guessing you were like 30. So I'm really off with my numbers.
Well, I'd like to think I have good genes and I've taken pretty good care of myself.
Well, that's good. You look very good. So the question would be, let's go back a little bit because I'm always looking for success clues. And I believe that smart companies are training and development organizations at their core. I know Blockbuster didn't have a great end and nobody saw that coming because they were the 800-pound gorilla. But let's go back to Blockbuster. And it sounds like they had a major impact on your development in business. I mean, was Blockbuster in the training and development? Was it the culture? Give us a little bit more intel on how Blockbuster in its day was dominant and kicking some real butt.
It was a great organization the time that I was there. It had a great culture, even though when I left, there were about 25,000 employees worldwide. It was, you felt part of a big organization and something really special, yet you felt it was very personal. And there was great leadership at Blockbuster from the CEO down for many, many, many years. It did change over time, and the culture changed a bit. I can still say though, when I was with Blockbuster, if you had Blockbuster on your resume in a mid-management or upper level position, it was gold. They had a really good atmosphere on promoting from within, training from within for leadership roles. We were growing so fast that you needed a balance of promoting from within and training from leadership positions within, but you also had to bring in outside talent. That's how quickly we were growing. And so if you were willing to work hard, I mean, this was a business that was open 365 days a year. They closed early on Christmas Eve. They opened late on Christmas Day. And that was the only change to their hours. And so you knew that you were going to work hard, and that was the expectation, but you were going to be rewarded professionally for it. And, I moved around, in my early years with Blockbuster, I was probably moving an average about every 9 months. I was relocating for different opportunities. And, I found in my career, you have to make good, smart decisions. But opportunity doesn't knock real often. And so I have found it's very easy for people to say no because that's just easy. I think good, strong leaders find a way to say yes on an informed basis, and they figure out how they're going to do it. There was only one time I turned down, that I can recall, I turned down an opportunity with Blockbuster, and that was they wanted me to go to Japan for a couple of years. And as a single mother with a young child that was, I think, 3 at the time, it just wasn't practical for me. It may have been a terrific opportunity. It just wasn't practical. And I knew there was so much other opportunity ahead at Blockbuster at the time. And so I think that's been the key. And that's what Blockbuster taught me was, there are going to be challenges. There are going to be failures. But you can recover from that within the organization, and we're going to give you opportunity to be successful. You're going to have to say yes to those opportunities, though, and that really did set me up.
A couple of thoughts on it, and this should be real for our business leaders that are going to enjoy this podcast today. Dynasties can come to an end. I mean, we've seen the Roman Empire, and we've seen the Greek Empire and the Egyptian Empire. You can say Blockbuster was an empire. And the one yes they probably regret they didn't say was yes to Netflix when they had a chance to buy Netflix. But, so even BlackBerry, a lot of times in our coaching sessions, we talk a lot about BlackBerry because they were the first company to launch the smartphone. So the moral of the story is that no matter how successful you are in business, you're still vulnerable. You're vulnerable to a bad decision, you're vulnerable to a mistake. But what we want to talk about is peak performance. From your experience, being inside of Blockbuster, fantastic. Sylvan Learning Centers, oh my God. And also, what you're doing now with Home Helpers, you guys are kicking some serious butt. When you hear the word peak performance, based on your 30-year career, what does peak performance mean to Emma Dickerson?
Walter, you were a professional basketball player. You're very competitive. You had to really train differently. It's really easy to be average. That's easy. What's hard is to be exceptional. And I'm I'm a runner. I race competitively still today. Now, just for my age group now, I'm not trying to compete with the 20-year-olds. And it really does.
Or what kind of run? Are we talking about marathons or?
Yeah, well, I don't do marathons. I do anywhere between a 5K and a half marathon. There's a half marathon I like to do every year in Lexington, Kentucky. It's through horse country and it's beautiful. And then I do as many of the local races as I can. It comes down to there's a mental part of peak performance, and there's a physical part and an emotional side of peak performance. And to really be exceptional, you have to be aligned in all three. You can't neglect one or the other if you really want peak performance. And it is about holding yourself to that standard and helping those around you get to a higher level, to that peak performance. So in leadership, it's not just about taking care of yourself, it's taking care of everyone around you as well. And I love some of the analogies that you've had in your books and in your speech, your presentations to home helpers about, being that team player and being the one that everyone wants to work with. And I think it really comes down when you think about peak performance, it's stretching yourself and taking care of yourself mentally, emotionally, and physically. And so many times leaders neglect one of the three. Either they don't like to work out, and physical health is just as important as your mental or emotional well-being. And I think you have to pay attention to all three. And I think you have to have focus, attitude, and discipline around all three.
Love it. Great answer. And my question, it kind of digs into it a little bit more. Obviously you're a CEO and you're a boss. Let's talk about your mindset. How important is mindset to you? And how did you develop your mindset to position you? Because I'm sure you've had some ups and downs, some undulations. You're a runner. Sometimes you're running uphill. Sometimes you're running downhill, right? So give us the what was most important for you in your development that really gave you the right mindset in order to become a CEO?
I think when I heard someone say to me that you're never going to be perfect, but you strive for perfection and you accept excellence. And that's been kind of my mentality. There was something that you said too in one of the times that you were with Home Helpers, and some people brighten the room when they come into the room, and some brighten it when they leave. And those were words that you had put it in a way that I hadn't thought about it. My mindset has always been one to be positive. I don't know very many successful people that have a bad attitude. No. Or don't love what they do. It's one of the reasons we've embraced BOLD as our corporate value system, which is bring your passion every day, own your results, love what you do, and be driven by excellence. That applies in your personal or your professional career. And mindset is everything. And you're right. CEOs are like everybody else. They have good days and they have bad days. The difference is you can't really show your bad days. You're a leader. You have to, except to your trusted advisors, your inner circle. No one wants to follow someone who has bad days all the time. No one wants someone to lead them that constantly is negative or has condescending remarks to make. Mindset, to me, is the biggest key between being a leader and being a manager. And there are differences.
Because not only does your mindset drive you, everybody's looking at you. Everybody's watching you. What does Emma say? What does Emma do? And I think people will hear what you say, but watch what you do, more closely anyway. So how do you help your collective team with their mindset? It's one thing for you to think the right way. What approaches do you have for some of our CEOs and business leaders hearing from you today? How do you help establish the right mindset in the people that work for you?
Well, I think you have to show by example, first of all. To your point, most communication is nonverbal. 80% of communication is nonverbal. So I think you have to lead by example. And then you have to give them the space to share their bad days in this inner circle where they don't do it publicly, and be able to provide them mechanisms and coaching about how to lead that example with others around them. I think that's just incredibly important.
Right. Well, I want to ask you another question, because we always talk about the shark mindset, and it's really a metaphor for mentorship. And I know mentors have played a huge role in my life. The first mentors were my parents. I had a great basketball coach in college. My NBA coaches were amazing. And when I started speaking, I had mentors. I tell you what, man, people say, wow, Walter, you've done some cool stuff, you and your wife. But I'm like, look, we've had help and support the whole way. Yeah, I want you to just give us, who was your most impactful mentor in your life, and what do you give them credit for to helping you shape or help shape you to who you are today?
I'd have to say both of my parents, and my dad specifically. My dad had an 8th grade education. He was born in before the Great Depression. He was a World War II vet. He had worked for a company for 20 years and got laid off in the recession of 72. And he bought a business in Ocala, Florida. He and my mom, which was a small independent motel. I was 9 years old, and it was a family business. I had a wonderful childhood. I had terrific parents, but we were not comfortable financially. And what I learned is, first of all, my parents would give you the shirt off their back. They were the kindest, most wonderful people, very faithful. My dad had a saying, though, that he said, there's doing things right and there's doing the right thing. And again, there's a difference. In franchising, as an example, our franchise agreements tell us how to do things right. Who's going to be responsible for what your obligations are. But in life and in business, there's doing things right and there's doing the right thing. For example, for us in COVID-19, we've got hundreds of franchisees across the country. And when this hit in the middle of March, everyone was afraid, not just for health, but business and economy and family. And we made a decision early on to provide some financial relief to franchisees. We did not have to. That was not in our agreement. It was the right thing to do, though, until our elected officials decided what they were going to do. And so I just think that has stuck with me throughout my life, that there is doing things right, and you want to absolutely do that and strive for excellence, but there's doing the right thing. And that's more telling of someone's character and their integrity, and a company as well, and their culture, than just about anything else. And so I just think that that's an important factor. And that's what I got from my parents: a great work ethic and the right way to treat others. And my dad always said, your integrity and character is something no one can take from you. You will be the one to establish it and keep it or give it away. And he was so right. And I've had, like you, many great mentors throughout my career, but my dad and my mother were absolutely by far the best. I learned so many life lessons growing up. I grew up in a motel, Walter. I mean, how many children are going to say that they grew up in a motel and worked? It was a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week business. We went to church in shifts.
I can imagine. And I know where Ocala is. My wife's from Florida, and she has family all in that area, in Claremont and Lake City, Florida. So I know exactly, what you're talking about. And it's not South Florida. It's not Miami. It's not South Beach. I totally get it. How about your professional career? I mean, did anyone kind of see potential in you at Blockbuster or Sylvan and kind of, hey, you know what? That girl right there is special. Let me take her under her wing.
I had a number of them at Blockbuster, but the one that is most prevalent, her name is Eileen Terry. She worked in Blockbuster for quite some time. She was the first woman to ever lead the franchising division, and she was the first woman in that organization to have an executive vice president title. And I think she may have been the only one. I still am in contact with her today. I still run things by her from time to time. We've stayed in contact all these years. And that would be the highlight at Blockbuster. She really did take me under her wing and saw good potential in me. And I credit where I am today professionally because of her mentorship. The other, though, is Peter Cohen at Sylvan Learning Center. He's now the president of the University of Phoenix.
Wow.
But at the time that I was with Sylvan Learning Center, he was the president there. And he also was just a wonderful mentor as I continued to grow my career. And, I still am in contact with him as well. Sometimes you just are so blessed to make these incredible relationships that if you're paying attention and you're willing to do the work, mentors don't, I love to mentor individuals, but they have to be willing to do some work. I'm not going to do all the work for you. And so it's one thing to find a mentor, but you have to really be a good mentee as well. Right. You have to be willing to put in the work and listen, and sometimes take some very tough feedback and decide what you're going to do with that. And I got to tell you, earlier in my career, I remember Eileen as an example. I was sitting in her office one day and we were having a conversation, and I responded to a question with, "I don't disagree." Well, that's a common, comeback, if it's true, of course. And she sat back and she folded her arms. She said, "Emma, I'm going to ask you something." And I said, "Okay, what, Eileen?" And she said, "Why do you come with an answer that says, 'I don't disagree'? Why wouldn't you just turn that into, 'I agree'?" And I went, "Wow, you're right. I don't use that anymore." There's also 4 words that I really try to get out of my vocabulary. And I think they are professional career killers. And I'll share them with you. I'm going to write a book on it one day. But I'll share it with you. Just, but, because, and can't.
Interesting. So you learned those from Eileen, or this is kind of your...
That's mine, just along the way.
Love it, love it, love it, love it. So basically, one thing that we always stress is that mentorship is key to anyone's development. And I think we all should mentor. And to your point, we all should be good mentees, because there's nothing more frustrating for a mentor to invest time in a mentee and them not go and execute, or them take your time, waste it, and not go and do it. So I'm pretty confident that Eileen and your other mentor from Blockbuster are extremely proud of you, because you weren't the mentee that said, and then did nothing with it. I mean, you clearly listened, you followed directions, and you executed. That's what Jerry Sloan told me when I played for the Utah Jazz. I said, "Coach, I'm trying to make your team. How can I make your team?" He just said, "Listen, follow directions, and execute." Now, on the surface, that sounds really simple and easy, but it's amazing how many people struggle with listening. It's amazing how many people struggle with following directions. You're in franchising, right? And sometimes franchisees got their own mind, they got their own way. And just sometimes it's as simple as say, "Hey, we've made all the mistakes. We've done all the thinking for you. Don't overthink it, Mr. Franchisee, Mrs. Franchisee. Listen, follow directions, and execute, and you'll be fine." So I want to transition a little bit, because I believe we're all in the people business. We all need mentors. We all need leaders. We all need someone to influence us. But now I want to shift to teamwork. What are your thoughts? And I'm a basketball guy, and we just created a whole methodology on teamwork, because when I left sports and got into the corporate environment, everything was leadership, executive presence and own the room. And I began to see the way we teach leadership for the most part is very self-centered. And when you play in the NBA, you don't talk about leadership because we're all grown men. We're married. We have kids. I don't need a leader. I'm a man. I'm grown, but I need you as a teammate. What are your thoughts on teamwork? And how important is teamwork from your whole experience and really building a high performing team in a corporate environment?
I think any CEO that's successful would tell you that team is everything. I don't get to sit here and talk to Walter Bond because of anything and everything I've done. I'm sitting here talking to Walter Bond because I have been able to put together a high performing team. And I think of my position, I love sports, and you know that. College, pro, you name it, I love sports. I think of myself as the coach. I think of the team, the members of my team as the players. And when you're a coach, you have to be selfless. You can't, it's not about you. It's about making everyone around you better. And that means different things for different individuals. You have to figure out what makes someone tick and how they receive and give information and feedback to help set them up for success. And that's a uniqueness that I think can be taught. I do think though that those that are born with it have a leg up. You know, there are some leaders that even when they walk in the room, Walter, they're not going to own the room. When you walk in a room, you own the room. That's absolutely evident. There are leaders that lead in different ways. I see my role as that of the coach and those that are around me as part of the team. And my goal is to help them be the best they can be. And sometimes you have to make trades, right? You have to trade out your players because they're not going to get you to where you want to go. And that's okay. It's unfortunate, but it's okay. Either because they can't or they won't. And you have to decide which that is. If they won't, that's easy. If they can't, you put all the training you can into them. And at the end of the day, try to be able to say, I did all I could to help and to make them better. But teamwork is everything. And so I read a lot about teamwork. I've been part of a team for, since I was in middle school on sports teams and the band and all those things. And everybody has their key role. And to your point about what your coach told you, it's so true as part of any team. Sports, to me, the sports analogies are very similar to corporate America. Very similar. And, I personally like individuals on my team that have some level of, in their growing up, they've had some level of competitive team that they've participated in. It doesn't mean it has to be physical. It might be the chess team. It could be the debate team, but they've had to represent themselves and work together for the common good. And I think that those that have had those extracurricular experiences, in my opinion, are easier to coach. It doesn't mean that anyone who hasn't isn't coachable. It just means that you may have to coach them differently.
Because they kind of get it already based on past experience. And to kind of sum up what you mentioned, and I've been inside your culture, so I know it's true. A lot of mistakes that leaders make, that leadership is about me. Teamwork is about us. And that's one thing that you learn from sports is that as a coach, they didn't lose, we lost. You know what I mean? We lost together, we win together. And so I think that sports is a great teacher. It's a great example. You learn how to win together, you learn how to lose together. And typically you go back to practice and figure out why you lost together and be accountable. When I played on losing teams in the NBA, Emma, we pointed fingers, we blamed each other. It was a bad culture. But when I played on winning teams, all you would do was see after a loss, everybody had their head down and like, man, my fault. If I would have grabbed that rebound, man, my fault. If I just wouldn't have turned, it was a beautiful thing. Total opposite, that winning organizations are accountable. Mediocre to losing organizations suffer with accountability. They love to point fingers, love to criticize, love to blame. And I believe success is a team sport. So here's another question that we ask all of our guests, and I want you to name one of the five. We coined the phrase work expressions. And I'm a sports guy, and it's obvious to me why LeBron James is the best basketball player in the world today. He can do it all. I mean, he does everything at a high level. But for the most part, most pro athletes don't, right? They do one, maybe two things well. So I want to give you the characteristics of our work expression to give us some understanding on how you kind of excel and how you kind of stuck out the pack. So listen to all five. You choose one that most closely explains who you are and why. 1, innovator. 2, initiator. 3, instigator. 4, improver. 5, implementer. Of those 5, which one most closely represents who Emma Dickerson is?
Well, I think as a leader, you have to have some of all of them.
True.
For sure. I would say for me, it's an innovator. I have a history of good ideas that I can communicate to a high-performing team and say, let's make this happen. You know, let's test it, let's pilot it, let's tweak it if we need to. And, you know, as an example, we just launched with Home Helpers within the last month, a new program that is completely different than any of our competitors in our space. It really, you know, to use some of your language, builds a better mousetrap. Mm-hmm. And it completely turns what most in our industry do from an hourly rate for an in-home caregiver to a bundled service package that includes up to four different solutions that people face when they're in their home, that drive them out of their home. And so for us, so that's why I would say an innovator. I have a little bit of all of them though.
Absolutely, and I should have set that up. And you're exactly right. You can't be a CEO and not flow in all 5 of them at a high level. And we all flow in all 5 of them, but typically not at a high level. But you're right. You know, every CEO I've been around, and many COOs as well, mm-hmm. do have the ability to be pretty balanced in all 5 of the work expressions. So you're smart. You picked up on that right away. You know, let's talk about excuses, right? The first book that I wrote is All But Stink. Mm-hmm. When one of your teammates or if one of your franchisees or one of your peers, when you hear them making an excuse, how do you react to someone making an excuse?
So that's, you know, the 4 words I gave you. That's why I think they're career killers, because, you know, I was late because I thought I would get that done, but
okay,
I can't get that done.
And here's why.
And here's why. So I think that you have to, is it a habit or is it compounded multiple times, or does it happen from time to time? And so my reaction is, for the person who, you know, it's not core to them, I ask questions. So tell me, why couldn't you get it done? You know, what resource did you need? Why were you late? And let them come to their solution. I was late because I left work. I left home too late. Okay, so how do you resolve that? I'm using the very simplistic, right? For someone that it's chronic, well, first of all, they don't last very long. And number 2, I call them on it. You know, I do it kindly, don't misunderstand me. I'm always very professional. However, you know, as a leader and talking about peak performance and a high performing team, you have very high expectations. And if you can't be part of that culture and be that good teammate and to your colleagues, then it's time we trade you. And excuses don't get you far.
Love it, love it. And it sounds like you learned that from your dad. Was there a time in your life where you made excuses and your dad kind of, because I flunked out of my first high school, and I never forget, I just had all these excuses. Those kids are smarter than me. The teachers don't like me. I tried to justify it. And I never forget my mom said, baby, the teachers didn't like your answers. That's why. And so my parents are always kind of look, here's truth, man. Like we're not trying, but some parents kind of coddle, or some parents, co-sign or
Enable.
Was there a moment in your life that you can remember that it was a defining moment when you just basically said, okay, it's time for me, and because you're a female in business, and I'm smart enough to realize that that's a minority group. We don't have a lot of females in business. We don't have a lot of females on corporate boards. And I had a lady named Connie Podesta. I don't know if you know that name. She's a fellow speaker. She says to me, you and me are minorities. And I'm like, what? You're not a minority. You're a white lady with blonde hair. She's like, no, 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 no. As a speaker dealing in the executive environment, you and I both are minorities. Look around. It's all men and typically all white men, right? So excuses, being a female in leadership, bring us home. Let's be real about it, because we got some female executives who tune in today. What adjustments have you had to make as a female executive to show strength and the ability to like, hey, I can compete, I can run this business just as good as any man?
I remember, and I won't tell you the company I was with at the time, I was up for a promotion, and the person that was going to have to make that decision, I already worked for. It was just a promotion within their organization. And unfortunately, someone in human resources told me that they were concerned to promote me because I was a single mother. And this was 20 years ago, 25 years ago. And the world has changed some. And I ended up getting the promotion. The human resources head said, if she's qualified, you need to give her a chance. They really went to bat for me. And it was a white man who was the human resources, head of human resources, and a white man who was going to make that promotion. And I knew then and there that I was going to have to work harder, and I was going to have to be more prepared than because I was the only woman in this role at the company at the time. And I was one of two, but only one in his world. And that was probably the defining moment for me, to know that what I was attempting to do was different and unique, and that weren't many like me that I was going to see. And I was going to have to toughen up a bit, quite frankly. I could not, women have the perception, women in business, at least at that time, that you're too emotional, you've got too many responsibilities at home, you're not going to be able to do it. And I knew that I was going to have to make sure that I separated my personal and professional at work, and that I was going to have to work a little bit harder and be a little bit more prepared. And I was. And from that, I got continually promoted. I had to think about the way I was going to be perceived in the workplace. As an example, a business casual dress for a man is very different than business casual dress for a woman. It's those kinds of little things and details that, if women specifically aren't in tune to, they can get missed. You have to be articulate. You have to be strong. You have to be confident in what you're presenting, which means you must be prepared. The questions that you get on what you're proposing or presenting, you cannot walk away and have someone feel that you didn't know what you were talking about, or that you couldn't back up your thesis. And so it is different. And I think that the world has changed over the last 25 years. there still aren't enough women and individuals of color in what I would say are key leadership positions. And, you know, it just doesn't make any sense. It just doesn't. But you have to be prepared to make some changes in how, you know, everyone has a personal image, right? And their own brand image. Whether you know it or not, everyone has a brand image. And you're either doing things to help that brand image or you're not. And you have to be, again, finding a good mentor who will share with you little details, just little things that can make the biggest difference in how you're going to be perceived.
And Emma, to your point, you know, there's tons of double standards, because if a guy gets up and addresses the company and gets emotional, it's passionate. If a woman gets up and addresses the company and gets emotional, she's being emotional, and we don't know if she's strong enough to lead. So to your point, even down to dress, you know, a lot of people don't even understand what it means to be a minority. You got to do the little things. You got to pay attention to little detailed things because of optics. And I had a buddy of mine that mentored me named James Dallas. He said he's African-American. He became a CIO of Medtronic, the largest pacemaker. He was my mentor. And he said, you know what, everybody can hit the fastball. But if you want to be an executive as a minority, you got to learn how to hit the curveball. It was like, boom. And, you know, to your point, I couldn't even imagine the decisions you have to make, you know, when you get dressed in the morning. You know what I mean? I couldn't even imagine that no matter how emotional you might want to be, that you just got to not do it because of optics. And I'm sure you've overcome that now because they know you are a strong leader. But when I first started speaking as an athlete, you know, I used to do these keynotes and I would be so passionate that I would just wear a shirt. I got these custom shirts made with the company logo on them. And because I was just, the suit coat was just entering me, you know, keynote. And a woman came up to me and she said, you know what, you gotta wear a jacket. And I was like, why? There's other guys here without jackets. No, you gotta wear a jacket. She says, when you're up there speaking, everything was great, but without a jacket, I kept seeing you as a basketball player. If you had on a sport coat, I think I'll see you as a business guy. And she's like, I don't mean to get into, I said, oh no, no, thank you. I knew exactly what she meant because of optics, perception, that when I put on a sport coat, I live in a neighborhood in South Florida that when I answer my door, and it's a nice neighborhood, the number one question I get is the owner of the home present? You know, we got a UPS shipment just yesterday, and I'm dressed down, answer my front door, and the guy was like concerned about leaving, you know, the package because he wasn't sure if I was the owner. Like, I answered, if a white guy answers his front door, it's his house. For me in my neighborhood, if I answer the front door, and if I'm not dressed, you know, a certain way, they're not sure, you know. So we get all of the details. I got two more questions. And Emma, you've been gracious, you've been fabulous, you've given us a bunch of nuggets. But I want to finish strong, right? That's what you do in sports. You're running your 5K, you want to finish strong. And so I want to talk about training and development. You know, one of the slogans that we have every time I speak, I tell all my business leaders, smart companies are training and development organizations at their core, masquerading in their core business. We've seen that with McDonald's, Chick-fil-A. Now we heard about Blockbusters today. What was your most impactful book or training that you'd like to tell us about?
Book or training. There's a book called The Peaceable Kingdom. It was written by, it's older, it was written by a gentleman that's in Dallas that has an advertising company. And I actually went out to see him in Dallas and his organization. And it was very unique at the time. Large advertising and marketing agency, PR agency, and his culture, it was all about the company's culture. Peaceable Kingdom. And it was designed around teamwork and this collegiate kind of interaction with all the staff. He had the building, he had 3 floors of this big high rise, and he had it redesigned so that there was you could literally come out to the railings on those 3 floors, and there was a platform, like a bigger at the stairwell that connected them openly. You could have leadership standing on this platform and have a meeting, just everybody coming out to the rail, 10, 15 minutes and just getting an update. He had it set up. And so when I was there, they did a talent show from that platform. That was part of their culture. They, marketing advertising agencies, they have, graphic designers and digital folks and video and writing and all these different things. They didn't put their whole graphic design department together or their whole writers together. They had sat all together. It made them get up. It wasn't assigned seating by department. It was done in a way that created opportunities for people to get up and move around and talk to people and learn about new people as they went around. None of the leadership doors had offices on them. He as the CEO didn't have an office door. They had what they called just-in-time rooms where you could go behind closed doors and have a meeting. Wow. And it was to encourage this open door policy. Now, this was, 15, 20 years ago, but it had an impact on me about how you want to create. It's not just the culture that you create in a feeling and an emotion. It's also about how you set up your physical space to help create that culture that you're attempting to, continue to adopt and expand and improve. And so I would say that, and it's not a well-known book. I still have it in my library, and it had a big impact on me.
Okay, say the title one more time.
Peaceable, Peaceable, Kingdom. Like Animal Kingdom, Peaceable Kingdom.
Love it. And how we communicate and how we build culture and how we connect, I think is everything. And when people feel connected to a culture, they're going to be more engaged. And I think when people feel disconnected from a culture, the same is going to be true. Okay, final question. Another slogan that we have, and I think I did this workshop for you guys, as a pro athlete, we had the off season. And, that's when you get bigger, stronger, and faster. I mean, that's your chance to grow exponentially. In franchising, and you guys are in senior care, how do you guys approach strategic planning? And what would be some tips for some of our entrepreneurs and business leaders that you would like to give as they approach strategic planning?
Well, similar to your basketball days, even when you were in your off season or when you weren't, strategic planning goes on all the time. It happens in season and out of season. So strategic planning is a constant. It has to be looked at and revised often. For us, we go through formally strategic planning once a year. We have a 5-year business plan, but we check in on it quarterly, and we do a major innovation if we need to annually. And I think that part of that off season, as you said, you grow and you get faster and stronger. To me, that speaks to using that not just that strategic planning time. It's critically important. You also need time away from the business in that off season to take stock in your house and your physical and your mental and emotional plant, and include that in your strategic planning. And so I think that's where I think as leaders, we have to take care of ourselves mentally, emotionally, and physically. And we need to have those off seasons to kind of reset all 3 and be ready for good strategic planning. Because you can't just say, okay, we're going to do strategic planning, the month of June. if you're not ready, if you haven't done the things that you need to do from a focus, attitude, and discipline standpoint to get to strategic planning, it's just a waste of time. And so you have to approach it more than just, I mean, it has to become part of your daily life, but you have to have that off season to really plan your next steps, if that makes any sense.
Makes total sense, Emma. And to your point, when the NBA season ended, most athletes do nothing for at least 2 weeks to a month because you need your body to heal up. You need that ankle to heal up. You need that shoulder to heal up. A lot of guys have surgery right away, so they can start rehabbing for the next season. And, just yesterday, Antoinette and I was coaching a bank on our new IT methodology, and we had all the leaders on the call, and I could tell something was going on, something political, and they weren't talking and speaking up. Long story short, you can't do that with me. I'm too real. And we began to realize that there was some burnout going on. And the HR director and the president of the bank was on the call. So they did a follow-up the next morning with us. And they didn't think it was burnout. They thought that some of their managers didn't trust the other employees. And here's why. You got promoted because you've been working hard. But then when they got into these new positions, they just kept working hard and didn't realize as I go up the totem pole, my work shifts. Now it's about me managing efforts instead of me just working hard myself. And so there was a lot of responsibility to go around. And I didn't think they were burnt out. I think it was a growing pain of growth and promoting people. And that makes sense. If I've been working hard my whole life, being evaluated on my work, and I finally get to that level of leadership, if nobody trains me that my number one responsibility is to develop other people's effort, I'm gonna keep just working and being in my own little world because I'm gonna get evaluated on my work. So that call today was this morning with the bank, and it was just fascinating to have all of is it burnout? No, not really. It's a leadership thing and helping them process it and think it through. But that's why off seasons are so important. You got to know your strengths. You got to know your weaknesses. But Emma, you just taught me something. It's not enough just to have an off season, right? You got to have a preseason camp. You got to have some timeouts. You got to have some halftime conversations because we're all creatures of habit. And just to have a strategic planning session in June, if we don't constantly check in and reinforce it, we're going to all go back to our old habits and old rituals of how we did it last season. And so I want to thank you, Emma, for being on today. You just taught me something because our off-season methodology, we got to punch that up more. And it can't just be this 2-week experience or a week experience. It needs to be a year experience where you're constantly referring back to your off-season strategy to make sure you're slowly implementing and actually transforming your culture. How can we get in touch with home helpers? Because we got a lot of people on the call today that have seniors and loved ones. Where's the best place to get some information?
Our website is the best place to go. It's www.homehelpershomecare.com. And we have a network across the country. We serve about 1,000 communities today and Canada with senior care home care services for anyone who needs to be helped in their home. And we work in independent living facilities and assisted living facilities as well. So we would be glad to help anyone learn more about Home Helpers Home Care from either a business opportunity or if you have a family member who needs care. But where to start is www.homehelpershomecare.com.
Wonderful. And is this cash? Is it insurance? I mean, how do you guys bill your customers?
So most of our client base is private pay. They are utilizing their assets or long-term care insurance or veterans aid and attendance programs as well. We work a lot with the VA and their veterans aid and attendance benefits. We also we do have some business in the state Medicaid waiver programs as well. It varies by office though and state, but we will do, if nothing else, we will be happy to help anyone learn more about what options are available so they can make the best decision for their loved one, whether that is in-home care, private duty care, whether there are programs available, or suggesting what may be the most alternative setting for them if they need help with their activities of daily living. But we're happy to be a resource to help families get educated to make those decisions.
And my wife and I, we just got some long-term care insurance. So I want to encourage anyone out there listening, depending on your age. I'm 51. Your 40s and your 50s, I would imagine, is the best time to buy some because it's still very affordable. But to your point, as we age out and possibly have some kind of health crisis, I don't want my health situation or my wife's health situation to deplete the funds we've been saving up for, to pass on to our kids. And it happens with unexpected health issues. So long-term care insurance, I would think, is a great bridge, especially for a professional executive to invest in now, so we can call home helpers and it's no burden to anybody.
And that's a big key as well, Walter. I mean, I've done family caregiving since I was in elementary school, actually, but definitely high school and up to about a year ago. And what's more telling is it's one thing we all want to stay at home, where our family memories are, where we feel the safest and most secure. We know research shows that it's better in for all those reasons. I will say though that, and you and Antoinette, I'm sure have talked about this. I want to be able to stay at home. I don't want my husband to be the one that has to take care of me. And that's what long-term care insurance and other types of programs provide, which is so important to families. To your point, it helps you not deplete savings. It gives you the freedom and independence to be able to age in place at your home. It allows you to continue to be with your family. But I don't want my family to be the one providing the care. That's just not who I am. And I think that's true for many. I know it was for my mother, my grandmother, my father, uncles, aunts that we've cared for. And there are, I think too, not to get off on another tangent, but our society is looking at ways to make staying at home more affordable and more available. Medicare Advantage programs are now offering benefits through Medicare Advantage plans. I've been in Washington, D.C. lobbying for Credit for Caring Act and and changes to health savings accounts. And so, it's more financially affordable for the government and for private citizens to be able to stay at home. And so that's key. And you're absolutely right. I think in the coming years, there will be more things other than long-term care insurance to help enable that aging in place process.
Well said. One final thought. And again, Emma, thank you for joining us today. One thing I've noticed that my wife and I both, Antoinette, is that we've seen couples where one gets sick and the spouse becomes a caregiver and the spouse ends up dying before the one that was receiving the care. And I'm like, ooh, I don't know if that's common, but we've noticed that a couple different times. And that motivated us even more to say, okay, let's do long-term care insurance to make sure that's not our dynamic.
That is so very true. It happened with my mother and father.
I mean, I saw my mom provide care for my dad, who dealt with prostate care. And he succumbed to prostate and she was worn out. I mean, this is her husband, man. That was her guy, but my mom was exhausted because that's not her profession. And at the very least, she needed some help, So I know you guys would send people in, part-time, based on what the families need. It could be situational, right? It could be
Absolutely.
Just for a month or two or whatever the case may be. But I'm a fan of home helpers. I love what you guys do. And Emma, thank you for your time today. Wish you the best. And again, you made history. You've been our first female guest. And oh boy, did you hit it out the park for us. So thank you for everybody tuning in. Peak performance. You heard it today. I preach it all the time, but you heard it out the horse's mouth. We had a stallion on today. And so thank you for joining in, and we'll see you guys next week.
Thank you, Walter.